My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote.com. That's SelectQuote.com.
SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials.
The Two-Footed Podcast is brought to you by EPLindex.com and our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider. A virtual privacy network allows you to go online, change your location, access things you're geo-blocked from, while keeping your data safe. So, as an example, if you are a UK expat and want access to BBC iPlayer to watch Match of the Day, or ITV Hub, or all four, but you get that message that says this content is not available in your location, a Liberty Shield VPN gets you around that block, allows you to watch whatever you want on those services while also keeping your data safe. And it goes further than that. It allows you to open up Netflix's entire library by just changing your IP address. Liberty Shield is the #1 rated VPN provider on Trustpilot with 5-star ratings across the board. So go to libertyshield.com right now, use the code EPL25 and get either the hardware package or the software package. The hardware package is a router that you plug into your existing router, and any item you want to change the IP address on, be it your phone or your television, you connect that to the new Liberty Shield router. All other items can remain connected to your existing router. There's also a software package, which is instantly downloadable to your device and you can get using straight away. Again, libertyshield.com, EPL25 for 25% off at checkout. We're also brought to you by Home of Hopcroft, a giftware and homeware company located in Scotland but shipping worldwide. Check out homeofhopcroft.co.uk and do check out the EPL Index and Anfield Index shops, which you'll find on Etsy. Use the codes EPL10 or RED10 for 10% off at checkout. And lastly, do remember to check out A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. That podcast is on this feed before every Premier League match week. And then the EPL Roundtable, hosted by Kevin DeVries, on its own EPL Roundtable feed. So just search EPL Roundtable in your podcast device. And that's out after every match week. Now, on with the show. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is December 6th. Hope you're all well. The weather earlier would have been described as blustery, ideal for flying a kite. Now it's just wet and ideal for ducks, maybe a swan or two. We had games in the Premier League last night, and in the first game, Wolves picked up a win, beating Burnley 1-0. Wang Hee-chan with the only goal of the game. Wolves had a couple of chances before that. Burnley had a couple of chances. And Wolves score from a Burnley defensive mistake. Dara O'Shea plays Sander Berge into trouble. Berge overruns the ball. Wolves take it off him. The ball gets moved, ends with Wang, and he finishes really well. And it's a very good goal from a Wolves point of view because they win the ball back through pressing. But it's that Burnley mistake that cost them. Notable moment, Dan Bentley standing in for Jose Sa, a goalkeeper who's never really impacted the Premier League. Spent his career with Southend, Brentford in the lower league. Bristol City and moved to Wolves in January, in the January window of last season, and had only played 5 times before last night, only 3 games in the Premier League. He pulled off an absolutely outstanding double save in a 1v1 against Jay Rodriguez. He made himself big, made a great save. And then from the follow-up, Josh Brownhill's half volley is arrowing into the bottom corner, and Bentley makes a great save to keep the clean sheet and give Wolves a valuable 3 points. Wolves, with that win, go to 12th, 18 points from their 15 games. Now, obviously, teams below them still to play in this midweek round. So Crystal Palace can still jump above them, but they'll stay above Fulham. They're a point off Brentford, a point off Chelsea. I mean, that's about as good as they could have hoped for at this stage of the season, considering the turmoil there in the summer, considering they're without their best player in Pedro Neto. But it must be said, Hwang has really upped his game in the last few weeks. Obviously, Matheus Cunha is playing well. I thought they got some decent performances last night from their midfield. Lamina and Gomes both played quite well. They were also missing Rainik Nouri last night, which another very important part of that team. But altogether, I think they'll be very, very pleased to just get that win, because Burnley were coming in confident off the back of a big win for them. They'll have looked at Wolves and thought, you know what, they're not unbeatable. And Wolves' style of play tends to lend itself better to playing the good teams rather than those further down the table. Last night, they get the win. So all good for them. For Burnley, they stay second bottom, level in points with Everton, but a worse goal difference, 2 points ahead of Sheffield United, and they'll be hoping that Sheffield United lose tonight. They'll also be hoping for defeats for Everton. And Luton obviously lost last night because Luton played Arsenal and gave Arsenal an enormous scare. And Arsenal were very, very fortunate to get out of there with 3 points. Martinelli put them 1 up on 20 minutes. Arsenal had been struggling to break down the Luton defence, and it's a really bad moment for Luton. There's an overhit back pass. Kaminski has to rush across and knock it out for a throw. Gabriel Jesus, quick thinking, takes the throw quickly, puts Saka in behind the fullback. Luton haven't gotten into their settled defence. Saka pulls it across, and Martinelli finishes quite well under pressure. 5 minutes later, Luton are level. It's a corner. Rice and Gabriel jump into each other and make a mess of things. And Osho gets basically a free header from 9 yards out and powers it into the back of the net. On 45, just before the halftime break, there's a nice move down the right by Arsenal. White and Saka interchange well. White just clips across into the box and leaves it there for someone to attack it. The defence is all over the place. Jesus attacks it really well, and it's a really well-taken goal. 4 minutes later, Luton are level. It's another set piece, and it's more dreadful defending from Arsenal. Rice loses Adebayo. Adebayo jumps in front of Raya. Raya's flapping at thin air, and it's a goal, and it's 2-2. On 57 minutes, Luton are ahead. Ross Barkley picks the ball up, drives into the box, step over, creates a bit of space. It's a well-struck left-footed shot, but you'd still want your goalkeeper to save it. It's not good from Raya. And Luton are ahead. Now, within 3 minutes, Arsenal are level. Luton's defence, again, is just all over the place. Jesus with a lovely cushion pass into Havertz's path. Havertz gets there before the keeper lifts it over him and scores. And it looked like it was going to end 3-3, and it should have ended 3-3. There was to be 6 minutes of added time. 6 minutes was a little bit much to begin with. But on 97 minutes, Declan Rice gets on the end of an Odegaard cross. It seems that Rice headed it down onto the defender's head, which then took it into the net. but there's no conclusive angle. The two angles it shows, it looks like either Rice misses the header or he heads it down onto the defender. But it definitely seems to go in off the defender, but it's given as a Declan Rice goal, and that's fair. And Arsenal win 4-3. Arsenal have the best away record in the league, 5 wins, a draw and a defeat. However, they've only played 2 teams in the top half away from home. They drew at Chelsea, they lost at Newcastle. So much bigger tests to come. They've been obviously the beneficiaries of quite an easy run in the league thus far, with their only difficult games being Newcastle, which they lost, Chelsea, which they drew, Spurs at home, which they drew, and City, which they won. Obviously, City without Rodri, but Arsenal still won the game. Much, much tougher test to come. Oh, they did beat United as well, obviously, with the controversy in that one. But much, much tougher test to come. And for now, they're doing what they can. They're not as good as they were last season. It's not controversial to say that. They're not as good defensively. Even though their goals against record is good, they've got the best defence in the league thus far. They just don't seem as linked in as they were last year. Now, that's in part because there's been some chopping and changing at both fullback spots, but it's also because the midfield has been unsettled. We've seen Rice as a 6, we've seen him as an 8. He's moved back into the 6 in recent games, and in those games where he's been the 6, they've been playing Havertz and Trossard, who frankly aren't midfielders. If they do get Thomas Partey back, obviously that improves them hugely at the 6. It allows Rice then to go to 8, which improves them hugely there. And that's basically what they need. They need that 6, and then they need Rice in that box-to-box role. Rice doesn't have the passing ability that people think he has. He can play a long pass when he's got time and space to do it. But he struggles to break the lines, and that's why Odegaard's having to drop so deep to help out. Defensively, they're not as strong with Rice as the 6 rather than Partey. But if they had Rice as the 8, that would improve their pressing. It would improve their ability to create turnovers up the pitch, because all of Declan Rice's best abilities are those of an 8. Powerful running, carrying the ball, pressing, and winning the ball back high up the pitch. They're all the attributes of an 8. They're not the attributes of a 6. And last night he was poor. But he gets the goal at the end when he gets forward and attacks, because that's what he likes to do. And if people would stop misprofiling him, he could be appreciated for the player he actually is, which is a good to very good box-to-box midfielder, one of the top 5 in the world box-to-box midfielders. That's what he is. He's not the best defensive midfielder in the world. He's not a defensive midfielder. And he struggles defensively. Him charging around winning the ball is not him being good defensively. That's him leaving holes elsewhere. That's not the role of a number 6. It's why Arsenal's top targets for January are defensive midfielders, João Palhinha and Martin Zubimendi. Like, Arteta has quickly realised this guy's not a 6. He's an 8. And to get the best out of him, I'm going to play him as an 8 with a 6 next to him. Their midfield has looked at its best this season when Jorginho has played next to Rice. And Jorginho's not great defensively, but he's stable defensively. And positionally, he's very disciplined. And it allows Rice to go and do what he does as a disruptor. It allows him to have more license to carry the ball forward. If they got Zubimendi, I'd have some concerns over the physicality of him and Odegaard in one midfield, but their ball progression would be phenomenal. If they got Palhinha, then the physicality would be phenomenal with him and Rice, but your ball progression is not going to be quite as good, and Odegaard's still going to have to drop in. And one of the problems with Odegaard dropping in is it's causing their attack to falter a little bit. Now, Martinelli hasn't been particularly good this season. Jesus has been up and down, but they both got goals last night. Saka is the only one that's really performing at his best level. But so much of it comes from a disjointed midfield. The manager spent 170 million on 2 midfielders, or what he viewed as 2 midfielders in the summer, and he misprofiled both of them. He bought Rice to be a 6. He's clearly an 8. He bought Havertz to be an 8. He's clearly not an 8. At some point, we will have to have a serious conversation about some of Mikel Arteta's recruitment. Like, I was watching Ben White last night, and they spent 50 million on him to be a centre-back with the plan of selling William Saliba. Saliba, clearly a better centre-back than Ben White. Ben White then gets shunted to right-back. He's not the best right-back at the club. Tomiyasu is. Jurrien Timber's probably the best of the three, but he's obviously injured. They got bad news today. Tomiyasu's out for 3 to 4 weeks, which does hurt them, but mostly in terms of depth, because they've still got White, who is, he's good. He's just not as good defensively as Tomiyasu or Timber. He's not as good going forward, I don't think, as Jurrien Timber. Though his quick interchanging is better than either. And he's probably the best crosser of the three. But I think Timber's pace, his ability to beat people, just using that raw physicality, gives him a little bit of an edge. But then there's the goalkeeper situation. Mikel Arteta inherited Emi Martinez and Bernd Leno. He has spent 50 million and downgraded both. And now he has now he has David Raya and Aaron Ramsdale. He'd have been better off doing nothing, just leaving the goalkeepers as they were and putting that 50 million to something else. But a good win on the road. Got themselves a big old shake-up. They're 5 points clear now. Liverpool play tonight. City play tonight. City play Villa away. Villa have won all 6 away games this season, or all 6 home games rather this season, and look very, very strong at home. City have not been great away from home. You could definitely see Villa win that game. Then obviously Arsenal go to Villa at the weekend. Couple of wins for Villa, and all of a sudden they'll only be a point behind Arsenal. And wouldn't that be something? Given how Arsenal treated Unai Emery and the fact that this current manager spent over 600 million, and Emery took over a team that were relegation bound, has spent about 100 million, and if he was only a point behind them 16 games into the season as it would be, that would be a hell of an achievement for him. Tonight we have Sheffield United versus Liverpool. That is a 7:30 kickoff. Sheffield United with their new manager. Liverpool, I've always had a little bit of a dislike. Well, not always. No, not always. In the last couple of years, they've had a bit of a dislike for Chris Wilder because of comments by Wilder about Klopp and comments back the other way as well. Before that, there was a strong relationship. Wilder was a huge fan of Klopp, but they fell out over the 5 subs rule. Liverpool should go there and win. And nothing other than a win is acceptable for Liverpool tonight. Fulham host Nottingham Forest. That is a 7:30 kickoff as well. Let's actually get some injury updates on some of these games. For Liverpool, no Matip, no Alcantara, no Robertson, no Jota, no Becker, and no Bajcetic. For Sheffield United, no Basham, no Norrington Davies, no Egan, no Davis, no Jebison, no McBurney, no Brewster, and no Baldock. So missing a lot of players at both sides. Fulham, no Diop, no Rodrigo Muniz, and no Adama Traore. Nottingham Forest, no Teo Awoniyi, likely no Willy Bolly. Chris Wood should be back. Danilo is a doubt, and Murillo also a doubt. So we'll see how that shakes out. Also 7:30, Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth at Selhurst Park. No Czech Doucouré. He's done for the season. Torn Achilles. That's horrendous news. No Raksaki. No Rob Holding. You'd forget Rob Holding was at Crystal Palace. No Dean Henderson, which is really strange. There's been no update on him since late September. And no Eberici Eze. They reckon maybe another week and a half or so, and he should be back. For Bournemouth, who are obviously on a little run here of playing well and getting good results, no Tyler Adams, no Max Aarons, no Alex Scott, no Lloyd Kelly, no Ryan Fredericks, no Emi Marcondes, and no Darren Randolph. Brighton versus Brentford in the Model Club derby is on at 7:30 as well. For Brighton, no Stupinan, no Lamptey, no Fati, no Enciso, whose return date has now been pushed back to the middle of January, and hopefully he is back by then, because I love watching that kid play. No Solly March, no Danny Welbeck, no Mo Dahoud, no Adam Webster, and no Lewis Dunk, who got the extra game for calling the referee a baldy twat. So a lot of injuries for Brighton at the moment. For Brentford, also a lot of injuries. No Rico Henry, no Aaron Hickey, no Kevin Shade, no Christopher Asia, no Nathan Collins, no Christian Norgard through suspension, no Ivan Toney through suspension. Mikkel Damsgaard is expected back. Josh De Silva is a doubt. And Matthias Jensen is still dealing with this abductor thing, but I think he might be okay to play tonight. So you've got 4 good games, I think, at 7:30. Liverpool, Sheffield United, bottom team with a new manager coming in against a team currently in second. Fulham Forest is one of those kind of 6-pointer type of games where they're both scrapping to survive and, trying to alleviate the pressure by creating a gap on the bottom 3 or the bottom 4, as the case is this season, with 4 teams really in that kind of mess at the moment. Crystal Palace, Bournemouth. Again, Bournemouth are trying to get away from that group. Palace trying to stay away from that group. That one should be decent. And Brighton versus Brentford is 2 teams that play good football. It's two clubs to admire. So looking forward to that one. The bigger games, obviously, are the 8:15 kickoffs. So first up, Manchester United play host to Chelsea. United, remember, have not won a game against a top half team this season. Now, Chelsea are barely a top half team, and should they lose and Brentford even draw, they will go to 11th. So I don't know if we'd even count them as a top half team should they lose that game, depending on how the Brentford game goes. United go into this game with problems of their own. No Malacia, no Casemiro, no Martinez, no Evans, no Ericsson, no Sancho, because obviously the manager's still in his feelings, and no Amad Diallo, but they have gotten a few players back of late. Chelsea's injury situation is getting worse again. No Fofana, no Gusto, still no Lavia, no Gallagher, no Chilwell, no Chalobah, no Ugochukwu, no Noni Madeki, and no Carney Chukwuemeka. But one name notably not there is Christopher Nkunku. And that is a positive for Chelsea, that he seems to be off the injury report and ready to contribute. Obviously, they've waited quite a long time to get him in. He's yet to play for them. They spent big money on him. He's clearly an outstanding player. But when you don't have a player like him, who you've been, I assume, planning to build around, it does hurt when he's out for, what's he been out for now? 4 months? 3 months of the season. 4 months of the season. Yeah, 4 months of the season. They could do with him hitting the ground running and showing the form that he's shown the last 2 seasons for Leipzig. Remember, 23 goals in 36 games last season, 35 and 52 the previous season. They'll also be hoping he works out better than the last player that they signed from Leipzig. This will be a tough game. You could see a draw. You could easily see a draw. United are yet to draw in the Premier League this season, the only team without a draw. Burnley have 1 draw. Everyone else has at least 2. But United, allergic to draws, I think tonight could potentially be their first. The other game then is even more interesting. Aston Villa play host to Man City. Now, Villa, no Buendia, no Mings, and no Bertrand Traore. Buendia and Mings, they're out the season. They've been out since, in Buendia's case, pre-season, in Mings' case, the first game. Bertrand Traore wouldn't be a starter anyway. Villa have upgraded on Mings with Pau Torres, and Buendia, I don't think would get in the team right now, the way they're playing, with the form of McGinn, with Ramsey back, with Bailey providing good performances, with Zaniolo playing decent enough stuff. For Villa, this is a strong position to be in. They've had weeks where they've had long injury lists. Now it's just the two long-termers and Bertrand Traore. For City, no KDB. Rodri is suspended. Jack Grealish is suspended. Doku is a doubt. And Matheus Nunes is a doubt. The lack of Rodri is massive for this game. Rodri missed 3 games earlier this season through suspension, and City lost all of them. They lost at Wolves, they lost at Arsenal, and they lost to Newcastle in the League Cup, all without him. Because that's the difference he makes to that team. City need Rodri fit and available. Now, him getting the booking at the weekend is potentially a good thing that he misses this game, even though you don't want him missing a game against a team currently sitting in 4th. At least it means he can play with a bit more freedom when he comes back. Like, they've only lost 3 games this season, and they're the 3 games he missed, and they were all away from home. That's how vital he is to them. They've drawn their last 3 Premier League games in a row: Chelsea, Liverpool, and Tottenham. If they were to draw this one, that's not a bad run. Like, it sounds bad, oh, they've dropped points 4 straight games, but consider who they've been playing. Like, Stamford Bridge is always a tough place to go, as bad as Chelsea can be, if you're a top team. If you're a bad team, it's nearly an easier place to go, because Chelsea kind of have this almost arrogance about how they go about those games. But against the bigger clubs, Pochettino always does well. And then, you know, drawing with Liverpool, drawing with Spurs, yes, they were at home, but they're still 2 of your main rivals. They're 2 of the big 6. They're 2 of the teams competing for top 4 this season. Villa are another one of those teams. So it wouldn't be a bad run. And then it gets a little bit easier for them. They go Luton, Crystal Palace, away for the World Club Cup. They come back for Everton, Sheffield United. Like, those are all very, very winnable games for City. You'd expect 12 points from those ones, but you wouldn't be surprised if they got a draw here. You wouldn't be surprised if they lost tonight. Like I said, Villa have won all 6 home games this year. Villa are really, really good at home. I think they've got the 3rd best home record in the league this year, after Liverpool and Newcastle. And in truth, like, Newcastle have won 7 games at home, but they've also lost at home, which Villa have not. I'm looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be a good game. So we've got plenty of decent action tonight. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the news and we're going to do the gossip, and then we'll go to break and come back and we'll do a bit of nostalgia. So, news. Nick Pope is facing 4 months out after shoulder surgery. We talked about that one yesterday. Eric Ten Hag wants unity amid lost dressing room claims. I mean, he's the one causing some of the divide, so perchance he might want to look internally. Callum Wilson says there's an appetite for players to want to join Newcastle. I think that's probably fair. They're clearly a club on the up. They play a decent brand of football. They've got a manager who goes to bat for his players and empowers his players. And they're obviously offering good money because they've got big money behind them. There's some suggestions that Arteta should apologise to Aaron Ramsdale and go back to him and bin off David Raya, which I think would cause maybe more problems than it would solve. But clearly Raya is not the answer to their goalkeeping issues. FIFA's committee is considering tougher sanctions for Luis Rubiales, the banned former Spanish Football Federation president. He's currently banned for 3 years, and there's talk that he could be banned for even longer. The committee, when giving him the 3-year ban, stated the following reasons behind their decision: the lack of an apology, his continued insistence that the kiss with Jenny Hermoso was consensual, publicly insulting all those who saw the incident differently and calling them idiots and stupid people, the publication of a statement by the Spanish Football Federation in which Hermoso's name was not written or authorized by her, where they put out a statement in her name excusing him, and she had nothing to do with it. Using the General Assembly as a public forum to defend himself and distort the reality of the incident, and pressuring and emotionally coercing Jenny Hermoso on numerous occasions. Luis Rubiales is a scumbag, and he should never, ever be allowed to hold any place in football again. Ban him for life. Simple as that. Ban him for life. On to the gossip. Bayern Munich will face competition from at least 2 Premier League clubs for Fulham's 28-year-old Portugal midfielder João Palhinha in January. I'm going to guess one of them is Arsenal, and I'm going to hope the other one is Liverpool. Bayern Munich may miss out on Florian Wirtz of Bayer Leverkusen, with both Liverpool and Manchester City determined to sign him. I could see him going to City as the KDB successor, but not for another maybe year or two. Gremio and Uruguay striker Luis Suarez is close to joining former Barcelona teammate Lionel Messi at Inter Miami on a 1-year deal. So he's made it quite clear that that's what he wants to do. We're about to have the last weekend of the Brazilian Serie A season. Gremio had at one point looked like they were going to stage the most unlikely coup and win the title, but then back-to-back defeats killed their charge. They're 4 points off top, and they only have 1 game left, so they can't win the title. It looks like Palmeiras are going to go back-to-back. A draw in their final game will see them as champions. They play Cruzeiro. Cruzeiro are 14th in the league. So a draw will be enough for Palmeiras. Atletico Mineiro 3 points back, but they also have, Palmeiras also have a significant goal difference advantage. Plus 31 against plus 25. Flamengo also on 66 points, same as Mineiro, but they're only plus 15. But a draw for Palmeiras will see them go back to back. And what a run they've had the last few years. Like, they won back-to-back Copa Libertadores, and now they're about to win back-to-back league titles. Abel Ferreira has done an incredible job since taking over in 2020. That will be an absolutely astonishing 4-year run for them. Copa Libertadores in 2020, again in 21, league title in 22, league title in 23. Sensational. And frankly, they should have won the Copa Libertadores again this season. They were the best team in that competition, and they lost to a mediocre Fluminense team. And Fluminense, Copa Libertadores winner, they're at best going to finish 7th and may well finish 8th, because it's a team with the same points as them. And as we go into the last game, where are the fixtures? They play Coimbra, who are not particularly great, whereas Fluminense take on Botafogo, who are quite good. And to be fair, looked like they were going to run away with the league at one point. It's quite a staggering collapse by Botafogo this season. They were running away with the title, and it really has turned into a bit of a mess for them. They've drawn their last 5. Prior to that, they lost 4 in a row. They haven't won any of their last 10. And yet they're only 5 points off top. So that'll give you an idea of how clear they were with 10 games to go. I think they're on their 3rd or 4th manager of the season now, which isn't ideal. So you could easily see Botafogo getting something against Fluminense. and Atletico should win their game against Cueva. But Palmeiras, that's the game to watch tonight. 12:30 in the morning. That's the game to watch. Away to Cruzeiro, see them crowned league champions for the second time. And what an achievement for Abel Ferreira. And it can't be long before a European club takes notice and comes in for him. Like, it's not just the fact that he's won these competitions. It's the fact that he's winning them while his best players have been sold from underneath him. And the fact that he's working with so many super talented young players that he's developing along the way for them. And like Endrick, for example, right? Before he'd even really broken into the Real team, or the Palmeiras team, he'd been sold to Real Madrid. So you'd wonder for him, like, is he going to be committed? He knows he's leaving in 2 years. He knows that his future is already secure. Is he going to be committed? And when you watch him play, there's no question he's fully committed. There's no question that Ferreira has tapped into that kid and got him really, really locked in and focused. He's been tremendous for them. I can't remember how. Oh, that was Luis. Yeah, Luis Suarez was how I got onto that. Let me see. Does it name in this Guardian or this Telegraph article who the two teams are that would be interested? It doesn't. It doesn't name who the Premier League teams that would be interested in Paulinho are. Anyway, back on to what's taking place. Newcastle could sign 5 players in January. No, they couldn't. Former Wolves manager Julian Lopetegui, who has been linked with Manchester United, turned down a deal worth $15.4 million per season from Saudi Arabian side Al Ittihad because he wants a return to the Premier League. He's still living in England. Now, my guess is that's to do more with the visa process because he had to apply for a visa to come and work in England. And I think if he leaves, getting back in would be really, really tough. So it's easier for him to stay and just sort of wait for the job to come up. It would take a bid of at least 60 million for Aston Villa to consider selling Douglas Luiz. It would take a bid of an awful lot more. They're not even going to consider 60 million. They will laugh if someone offers them 60. Villa have put a 110 million price tag on Douglas Luiz. And that's one of these exclusives by Steve Kay, who's horrendous. They're not going to hold out for that much. But I do think they will hold out for 90. And why shouldn't they? Like, they've got no reason to sell. They're playing brilliantly this year. That midfield partnership with him and Kamara is outstanding. So why wouldn't they hold out for the best fee possible and only sell if someone overpays? Liverpool and Arsenal sent scouts to watch Jeremy Frimpong on Sunday. I don't believe that Arsenal did. He doesn't fit how Arsenal play. Real Sociedad are favourites to sign Mason Greenwood. I just don't see that being the case. Real Sociedad are not the type of club. I don't think they would want to associate themselves with such an individual. Manchester United's 26-year-old Netherlands midfielder Donny van de Beek has offered himself to Barcelona as a replacement for Gavi. I think Donny might want to stay in his lane. Manchester United will be given the opportunity to sign Donyell Malen if Jadon Sancho leaves the club. That is another exclusive. This one is from Jack Talbot, as football transfers continues to be the very bottom of the bottom. Crystal Palace will scrap plans to sign a striker in January following Cheick Doucouré's potentially season-ending injury. There's no potentially. That's season over. But they still need a striker. And they signed Jefferson Lerma as Doucouré insurance because they thought he might go in the summer. They do have Ahamada, who they could bring in and actually give games to. He's very, very talented. Wolves are interested in Sevilla's 32-year-old Argentina defender, Marcos Acuna, who's estimated to be worth 10.3 million. I don't think they are. They've already got a couple of good left backs. I don't think they want him. Sao Paulo are open to offers for Liverpool target Lucas Beraldo. Wolves had a bid rejected in the summer for the 20-year-old. He's very talented. Juve are willing to let English winger Samuel Illing Jr. leave in January with Tottenham and Newcastle both interested. Could make sense. West Ham lead Everton and Brighton in the race to sign Linfield and Northern Ireland under-17 striker Aodhán Doherty. If he's got any sense, he'll go to Brighton. Simple as that. If he's any sense, he'll go to Brighton. Everton don't develop players well, and West Ham do, to their credit, but Brighton is definitely the place to go for your own development. It's the best club around right now in England, certainly, for young players to be going to get opportunities. Right, we'll take a break there. When we come back, it's nostalgia time, so I'll see you after this.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.
Right, welcome back. So I had originally planned a couple of different things for today's nostalgia. One was to have a look at managers from the 90s, which I mentioned yesterday, and just some of the good characters that we had. The other was Michael Campbell had asked me to do a bit of a deep dive into the golden era of Brazilian football. But then I got thinking about Ravel Morrison, because I saw yesterday that he'd been convicted of using a dead person's blue badge to allow him to park in certain places after buying it for 50 quid. He was found guilty of fraud and has been fined £1,000. And I got thinking about Ravel Morrison and the talent of Ravel Morrison, and how when he was in United's academy, he was there with Pogba, and everybody knew about Pogba. But everybody who knew about United's academy said Ravel Morrison was the more talented player. And Paul Pogba's gone on to have a very good career, not nearly the career he should have had, but a good career. He won multiple league titles with Juve, he won a World Cup with France. He wasted a large chunk of his career at Manchester United, but such is life, and now he's currently facing a long ban after failing drugs tests. But Ravel Morrison never got to have any sort of career like that. And if you look at what's happened with Ravel, as he comes through United, at 19 he leaves. He's deemed as too much of a troublemaker. He goes to West Ham. They loan him to Birmingham, to QPR, and to Cardiff. He gets a run in the West Ham team, performs well, scores an unbelievable solo goal, and then, according to teammates, turned up late for training the next day because he just couldn't focus on football. After leaving West Ham, he went to Lazio. He never made much of an impact there. He had a loan with QPR. He had a loan in Mexico with Atlas. He went and played with Östersund in Sweden. Came back to England with Sheffield United when they'd just been promoted. Never made any impact there. Went to Middlesbrough on loan. Didn't make an impact there. Went to ADO Den Haag in the Netherlands. Didn't make any impact there. And then Wayne Rooney came back into his life, and Rooney and he had been teammates at United, and Rooney brought him to Derby. And at Derby, he started to perform. Now, they were obviously in a bad situation, but he did quite well there. And then he joined DC United when Rooney went over there. And he was playing quite well, and then something went wrong, and he was left out of their squad for this past season. He's only been allowed to train for the last year. Now, Rooney's obviously left and gone to Birmingham, and it wouldn't be a surprise if in January Ravel Morrison ends up with Birmingham. He's a very, very talented player. Naturally gifted, wonderful ball carrier, inventive passer, great engine, not the biggest, but very, very strong. But Ravel had a lot of issues off the pitch. He had a lot of people clinging on to him, a lot of people trying to drag him into a culture and a way of life that is not uncommon in deprived parts of the world, but not ideal if you're trying to make it as a professional footballer. And unfortunately for Ravel, he was never really able to separate himself from what he grew up with. And he was never able to separate himself from people with their hands out, people trying to use him to earn themselves money. Be that people he grew up around, family members, friends that weren't really his friends, agents. And he was treated badly at a couple of places. He was taken advantage of by a certain former short-lived England manager and his agent. And it's just really unfortunate that a player with that type of ability, who had incredible balance, control, speed, everything, just never quite was able to shake off all of that around himself and display the talents that he had. Ravel Morrison should have been a guy who was a regular for England, was a regular for Manchester United. He's only 30 now, and like his career has passed him by, and unfortunately, he's never going to be able to prove to people what he could have been. You know, you look at his entire career, 18 Premier League appearances for West Ham, 1 for Sheffield United, 19 Premier League appearances for one of the most talented players England has produced in the last 20 years. They had good times in the Championship with Birmingham, with QPR, with Derby. But every single time that he's found a groove, something has come along to derail it on him. That's such a shame. And he's a guy that never was able to show what he could do on the biggest stage. But I thought today we'd have a look at some guys that did show what they could do, but didn't sustain it for one reason or another. Players that, like Ravel Morrison, never lived up to the expectation, to the talent level. And the obvious one to start with is Dele Alli. And Dele's not a nostalgic player because he is still playing. He's not played this season. We know that his last few years have been quite chaotic. Fell out of favour at Spurs, joined Everton, had a decent start to life at Everton, quickly fell out of favour there, got sent on loan to Besiktas. For whatever reason, it just couldn't work out from there. And a lot of people have written Dele off, and it's probably fair at this point to write him off. But it's also important to remember how good he was. You think back to when he was at MK Dons and he broke through. And in his first full season playing for MK Dons, he scored 7 goals in 37 games. At 16, he's doing that. At 16 years of age. Then the next season, he scores 16 goals in 44 games. He's already agreed to join Spurs. This is more of a loan. And he joins Spurs. And he joins the Spurs team that has Heung-min Son and Christian Eriksen and Harry Kane. And he's like the keystone into that attack. He brings it all together. And that first year, he gets 10 goals in 46 games. The next season, he's spectacular, 22 goals in 50. Great again the next season, 14 goals in 50. You're talking about a guy who at this point, 2018, is 22 years of age. has already scored, as a midfielder, 37 Premier League goals. He's got 46 in all competitions. That's more than Gerrard or Lampard at that age. And that doesn't include the 24 goals he'd already scored for MK Dons. We were looking at a guy, and he was 10 assists most season as well, remember. But we're looking at a guy here who, with Harry Kane, has formed one of the best partnerships in all of Europe. Who's a regular for England, who's surely going to be 10 plus goals, 10 plus assists every season moving forward. And he went and played at that World Cup with a thigh injury. And he came back and he missed a chunk of the next season, and he played 38 games, scored 7 goals. The following season, again, he only plays 38 games, but scores 9 goals. And then he goes off the cliff. 3 and 29, only plays 15 Premier League games. Injuries, lack of form. Pochettino is long gone, and he doesn't have the same kind of chemistry with the new manager. Then 2 in 18 games, only plays 10 times in the first half of the Premier League. Goes to Everton in the January window, basically on a free, with money to come based on appearances, which, I mean, they turned down 100 million for Dele Alli in the summer of 2017. 100 million pounds was offered for him, and they turned it down. Because why would you accept it when he was 21 and looking like he might become like a genuine global star in the game? One of the very, very best players. And 4.5 years later, or 5 years later, whatever it was, he's leaving on a free with the potential that maybe we'll make 10, 20 million down the road. And Dele has talked openly in recent years about what's gone on and what's caused this. And he's talked about how he was sexually abused at the age of 6, started dealing drugs at the age of 8. He's had serious mental health issues. He's had a sleeping pill addiction that caused him to have to take a 6-week stint in rehab. The pressure and the hangers-on and the cling-ons and the people that came out of the woodwork when he had success dragged this young man down. Dele Alli is still only 27 years of age. And yet it's been a long time since we considered Dele an elite level player. Like, even if you give him the 2 seasons after the 2018 World Cup where he wasn't as good as he had been before that World Cup, you're still looking at this being year 4 where you wouldn't class Dele Alli as a top player. And that's a very, very sad thing. Because when he was coming through at MK Dons, he was as hyped as Jude. And when he had that second season with Spurs, it was Jude-esque how good he was and how well he was playing and the things he was doing. And he'd grown up playing street football, and he had that desire to play off the cuff, very similar to Ravel Morrison, similar backgrounds. But what happened with Dele that Ravel didn't get was a family took him away from his own bad family situation and helped him and got him on the right course. But then that bad family situation reared its head again. And there were threats, there was constant harassment. And unfortunately, it just wore him down. And it ruined what should have been a great, great career. At least with Dele, unlike with Ravel, we have evidence of how great he could be. But consider that he had 37 caps for England by 2019. And today he has 37 caps for England. He made his debut at 19. 37 caps in 4.5 years And then it was over. And that was his international career done. And unfortunately, it looks like his career might be done. I don't know what the answer is for Dele. Like, he's still young enough to rebuild things, to go somewhere and get a fresh start, but I don't know where that would be. I don't think it's going to be in England. I think he needs to get as far away from England as possible. Is he willing to go overseas again? I mean, he did okay with Besiktas to begin with, before the sleeping pill issue came up and became such a major problem for him. But would he be willing to go back to Turkey? Would he be willing to go to Italy or Spain, France, Portugal? Because they're all leagues he could thrive in. I think he'd thrive in the Bundesliga. Like, when Dele came through, he was like England's answer to Thomas Muller, but with more unpredictability in terms of what he did with the ball, with more technical ability on the ball than Thomas Muller. But that same type of uber intelligent off-ball runner, finisher, link player. Just, he was so much fun to watch. And it's been really sad to watch what's happened to him. Another one who it's really sad the way his career went, another one that we did get proof of concept of how good he might be, is Michael Johnson, who played for Manchester City, made his debut at 18, looked like he was going to be the next great English midfielder, looked like he might be the next Steven Gerrard. The 07-08 season, he was sensational, played 23 times in the league, 25 in all competitions, scored 2 goals. And that was kind of it. That was kind of it. He was 20 when that season ended. And then he had a hip injury. And then his life just went off the rails. And he hasn't kicked a ball since the 2011-12 season. He's only 35 now, and he hasn't played football in 11 years. He had a loan at Leicester. It got cut short by another injury, and City got rid of him in the December. And that was it. Career over. That one season, he was so good. That was City before the money. I think they were owned by the Thai Prime Minister or whatever he was. That was the team with like Alano and Stephen Ireland, and they were just loads of fun to watch. At the end of that season, he played 35 league games. By the end of his career, he played 35 career games. By the end of his career, he played 54. He played 35 games by 20 and 19 after. And it's such a shame. And he's had a number of issues with his personal life. He's had serious mental health issues. He's, I believe, now working as an estate agent. So he's moved on to a different chapter of his life. There was pictures taken of him in chippers and stuff because his weight ballooned, and he was clearly very, very unhappy with things at the time. He got done a couple of times, I think, for drink driving. And he was very clear that he would be grateful if people would just leave him alone for the rest of his life and just let him live his life. Football hadn't worked out for him. Football had chewed him up and spat him out. And he just wanted to go on about his life and not be hassled anymore. And thankfully, you don't hear him mentioned anymore. You don't hear people, you don't see pictures of him anymore. People just leave him be. But it is important to remember how good he was and how good he could have been. So I wanted to bring him up as part of this. Another player who suffered from serious mental health issues and unfortunately it torpedoed his career was Stan Collymore. Now Stan had a very odd path to where he got to. He started off with Walsall, went to Wolves, didn't make the grade there, went to Stafford Rangers, went to Crystal Palace, couldn't make the grade there because they had Wright and Bright, went to Southend, had one season there where he was outstanding, Went to Nottingham Forest, and that's where he explodes. He helps them get promoted, comes up, just tears the league apart. Collymore and Brian Roy, one of the most exciting strike partnerships in the league, one of the most talented strike partnerships in the league. This guy had absolutely everything. 6'2", built like a tank, rapid, great with both feet, could shoot, could pass, could cross, could do absolutely everything, could dribble, could do everything. Stan Collymore had everything. Need him to play back to goal, no problem. Need him to play off a striker, no problem. Stan Collymore could do it all. Joins Liverpool, and it all becomes very turbulent. He's a great first year. In year two, it starts to decline. But he's only, at that time, 25 years of age. So you think, oh, it's just a dip. He'll be fine. He never came out of that dip. Once he started to spiral, that was it. And Stan has been very open about his own issues off the pitch over his life. But you look at what he'd done at Forest and at Liverpool, and then remember that he leaves Liverpool at 26 years of age, and look at his career after that. And Stan's career basically ends with him as a squad player at Leicester City at the age of 30. He goes to Bradford. He has a short spell there. That might have been before Leicester. I think that was before Leicester. But by 30, he's out of the game. Like, Stan Collymore is maybe the most talented English striker I've ever seen. He won 3 English caps. He could do it all, but never really scratched the surface of what he could have been. He was great for Forest. He was really good in that first year at Liverpool. His second year is not bad. He still scored 16 goals. But after that, he was off the cliff. He was poor for Villa in his 2 years there. They got rid of him. He was... I remember he was offered a move to somewhere in Spain or somewhere, and they wanted him to come on trial. It could have been like Real Sociedad or Real Saragossa. I remember it was reported. Now, this was reported. It might not have been the fact of it, but he was offered a trial somewhere, and he refused to go because he said, I'm an England international. I don't go on trial anywhere. At that point, it was 3 years since his last cap, and 3 years since anyone looked at Stan Collymore and thought, well, that's potentially a great player. It's a shame. It's a shame. David Bentley, another one who's definitely worth a mention here. Came through the Arsenal Academy, was incredibly highly regarded. There was talk that he was going to be the next David Beckham. He had that crossing ability, that passing ability. Doesn't make the grade at Arsenal, has loans with Norwich and Blackburn, does well with Blackburn. They buy him. He has 2 excellent seasons there. And you think, you know what, the situation here is he is great as a big fish in a small pond. He moves to Spurs and it just didn't work out. He ended up in a 5-year span having loans with Birmingham, West Ham, Rostov and Blackburn. And he retired at 29. He won 7 England caps while at Blackburn. Once he went to Spurs, his England career was over. There'd even been talk early in his career that he might be the Bergkamp successor in that off-the-striker type of role because he was creative and inventive. It can't be stated enough how good he was for Blackburn. Like 06 to 08 for Blackburn, he was as good a right-sided midfielder as there was in England. 16 goals. I think he got like 19 assists or 20 assists in that time. Wonder, can I find that? Great set piece taker. His corners still to this day are among the best I've ever seen. Like he would get vicious amounts of dip on the ball and make it very, very hard for any defender to deal with. You didn't want to be giving up set pieces. So 06-07, 7 goals, 13 assists. 07-08, also 11 yellow cards, which, you know, shows he wasn't scared to put his foot in. He had 9 and 9 then the next season. So 22 assists in those 2 years. 16 goals, 22 assists. That's really good. That's elite level production from a right-sided midfielder, not a right winger in the Salah Saka type position. We're talking about midfield 4. They're Beckham-esque numbers that he's putting up there. And like he was never going to be as good as Beckham, but he would have been a decent approximation of him. And like I say, he went to Spurs. He had an okay first year, started to fall out of favour the second year, had a stream of loans, and that was it. He was done. Retired at 29. Such a shame. He said he fell out of love with the game, called it robotic due to the influence of social media and money, as well as predictable and a bit too calculated. He said he wished to spend time with his 3 children. Yeah. It's a shame. It's such a shame. I always liked watching David Bentley play. Genuinely felt like if he went to a big club, he was going to be a success, but he just wasn't. He just wasn't. When he went to Spurs, it all fell apart. But I think it was because he needed to be that big fish in a small pond. Very similar to Jack Grealish in a lot of ways. Kind of needs a little bit of freedom. Now, he was better off the ball than Grealish and far more productive than Jack Grealish, but wasn't as good a dribbler as Grealish. But Grealish, when he had freedom and a system built around him and everything funneled through him, obviously very impactful for Villa. Bentley was the same way. When everything was funneled through him, he would impact the game really, really well. When that didn't happen and he was on the periphery of things and he wasn't the best player on the pitch, just didn't seem to have a good effect on him. Next up, another lost talent is Jack Wilshere. Now, everyone knows the story of Jack Wilshere. Comes through at Arsenal. He's the next Liam Brady. He's the next Cesc Fabregas. He's the next big thing. Starts off like a house on fire, goes up against the prime Barcelona team in the 2010-11 season and bosses them at the Emirates. And then he gets an ankle injury and he misses the entirety of the following season. And he's never quite the same after that. And like 13-14, he had a good campaign. And then he was injured a bunch the next season. And then he basically missed a couple of years through injury. And then he had a little resurgence. Good loan spell with Bournemouth. Decent last season with Arsenal. Moves on to West Ham. Just can never get himself fully fit. Goes to Bournemouth. Goes to play in Denmark at the age of 29. And he's retired at 30. 34 England caps. All of them won before his 24th birthday. Or before his 25th birthday, rather. He should have been a 100 cap England player. Jack Grealish was a fantastic player at 18. And unfortunately for him and for Arsenal, he was never better than he was when he was 18. He was so intelligent. He was so graceful. His ability to pick the ball up and just glide past players, glide through the midfield into the final third, always pick the right pass, always make the right choice. It's such a shame that his career played out the way it did. Now, he did win BBC Goal of the Season in the 13-14 and 14-15 season, both of which seasons Arsenal won the FA Cup, the only real silverware of his career. But, you know, those were some great team goals. But his best season by far is that 10-11 season. He's 18 years of age. Turns 19, I think, in the January. And he was incredible. And if you can find that game against Barcelona, go and watch it. Go and watch that performance. So that is staggeringly good. He bossed Man United. He bossed a great Chelsea team. He just looked like the absolute next big thing. And then he has this weird ankle injury and he was never the same afterwards. Throwing back a little bit further, Lee Sharpe. Lee Sharpe came through at Torquay, joined Manchester United at 17, broke into the first team, and looked like the next big thing as a British winger, as an English winger. Capped by England at 20, and then Ryan Giggs emerged. And a combination of the brilliance of Giggs and Lee Sharpe's love of off the field endeavours just ruined his career. Now, I'm sure he's had quite a good life. He won titles with United. He won cups with United. But he didn't have the career he should have had. He only won 8 caps. He left United at 25. And he was just never relevant after that. Went to Leeds, had loans at Sampdoria and Bradford, joined Bradford permanently, did okay there, to be fair. Had a loan with Portsmouth, was playing for Exeter City at the age of 31, then ended up playing in Iceland with Grindavik, and then played for Garford Town at 33. Lee Sharpe is genuinely one of the most talented left wingers that England has produced in 40 years. And that's how his career panned out. Now, there was a spell where United moved him to left back and moved Irwin to right back. Neville had just come into the team. And they'd been trying to figure out for a while how to get Giggs and Sharpe in the same team. And this seemed to be the answer. Sharpe at left back, Irwin over to right back, Giggs left wing, Beckham right wing. This could be the business. And for whatever reason then, just didn't work. He hit some great games. I want to say they played Sheffield United. And it was a nighttime midweek kind of game. It might have been over Christmas or something. And I remember watching with my Uncle Colin, who's a United fan. And I remember him saying, that's our fullback sorted now. Irwin right back, Sharpie left back. They were brilliant on that night. And Sharpe, with his ability going forward, his crossing, his passing, the intelligence that he had in his game. And he was not afraid of hard work at all. I remember Colin thinking, that's it. They're the two. They're going to be our fullbacks. And that's always stuck with me. And then Sharpe dropped out of the team. Neville obviously established himself, went on to have a very good career. But Lee Sharpe's career then just nosedived. And by the time he left United at 25, like I say, he kind of ceased relevancy, which is a shame. A player whose downfall had nothing to do with his own behaviour or performances or health or mental health or anything like that, purely injury related, Ledley King. I think Ledley King is the best English centre-back of that group in the 2000s. Now, Sol Campbell was from the 90s. Sol Campbell's the best English centre-back post Tony Adams prime. I think Ledley King is number 2 on that list. Ledley King had everything you'd want in a centre-back. He was big, he was quick, he was strong, he was good in the air, he was good in the ball, he read the game well, he was an organiser. Ledley King was a much better defender than Rio Ferdinand. Much better defender than Rio Ferdinand. And he was quicker and better on the ball than John Terry. Ledley King only won 21 caps because Ledley King's knees just ruined his career. And he could never stay fit. And he couldn't train. And because he couldn't train when he went away with England, he was kind of standing around. And he missed his opportunity. But if Ledley King had just, normal human knees and not paper mache and Velcro, he's easily a 100 cap player. Easily a 100 cap player. A genuinely outstanding defender. Genuinely outstanding. Likewise, Jonathan Woodgate. Another player whose career was ruined by injuries, but would have, in my opinion, been King's partner for England And I think with that pairing, rather than the arrogant two, I think they would have won something. They were better defenders than the other two, individually and collectively. Woodgate only won 8 caps. So between the two of them, you've got 29 caps. John Terry won 78. And Rio Ferdinand won 81. And the two better defenders won 29 between them. And we saw Woodgate and Ferdinand play together. And they're about the same. Rio, I think, is a couple of years older. But there's no doubt Woodgate was the better defender when they played together at Leeds. Rio's 2 years older. Woodgate was better than him at Leeds. He went to Newcastle. He did well at Newcastle, earned a move to Real Madrid and was just injury plagued. And his entire time at Real was ruined by injury. Ledley never got a move away from Spurs because of the knee injuries, because teams were terrified of what would happen if his knee just completely gave up. Shame. Another player ruined by injuries, Robbie Fowler. People forget how good Robbie Fowler was when he was young. Robbie Fowler came into the Liverpool team. In his first season, scores 18 and 34. Then he goes 31 and 57, 36 in 53, 31 and 44, and then the injuries hit. And it's 13 and 28. It's 18 in 35. They're still good numbers. They're still good numbers, but they're not nearly as good. He went from 2 and 3 to 1 and 2. And then he got injured again. And it's 3 and 14. It's 17 and 48. It's 4 and 74. Sorry, 4 and 17. Those first 4 years, Robbie Fowler is the best natural goal scorer I've ever seen. Just a pure goal scorer up until the age of 22. And then he gets injured and he's never quite the same. He loses some of his burst. He loses some of that mobility. But you want to talk about someone that could score every type of goal. Left foot, right foot, in the air, tap in, long range, rocket, curler, both feet. Could pass it into the net from absolutely everywhere. Robbie Fowler, to me, is the best natural goal scorer I've ever seen. You could watch Robbie Fowler all day long, just in the penalty area with his movement. All of it really subtle. A half step forward, 2 steps back, all of a sudden he's got a yard of space. A half step back, 1 step forward, now he's in a yard of space. A fent this way, a burst that way, in behind the defence, and every first time finish in the book with either foot. We haven't seen someone as good with both feet as Robbie Fowler. We just haven't. Can name all the great strikers of the last 30 years. The great goal scorers, Shearer, Batistuta, Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, maybe you could make the argument, but he didn't have Fowler's touch. He didn't have Fowler's ability to caress a ball. Cristiano does everything with a lot of power and burst. Fowler did it with finesse and feel. But go through the great goal scorers of the last 30 years, and none of them had Fowler's ability to do it with both feet from anywhere. There's no striker I can think of that has that array of goals with both feet. Curlers from 20 yards, chips, rockets, just passing it in, whatever you wanted him to do, chipping the keeper in 1v1s, the little dinked finish that he had as well. And he just had this nose for goal, because he scored a bunch of scruffy goals as well, because he'd just get on the end of things. He'd throw himself at balls, and if it went in off his arse, he didn't care, as long as it went in. He just had that ability to score a goal. And Robbie Fowler is historically underrated. Only 26 caps for England. Again, should have been so many more. A player who was once his teammate at Liverpool, Michael Owen. Another one who's just become historically hugely underrated. And another one I think is a lost great English player. Now, he did get 89 caps. He did score 40 goals for England. But his England career was over at 29. And his club career was never the same after leaving Liverpool. And he left Liverpool at 25. He had a decent year with Real. He joined Newcastle. He had 2 lost years, then 2 okay years. And then he was just a squad player at United and a squad player at Stoke. And it was sad to see the way he retired, coming off the bench for Stoke, not really able to move anymore because of the injuries he'd had. But Michael Owen was so special at Liverpool. I've said this before. Michael Owen at 18, 19, 20, prior to the serious injuries. Now, he'd had the hamstring, but he was still, he was Kylian Mbappe of his day. He was terrifying. Defenders were so afraid of him. Rio Ferdinand talks about him, about how Michael was such a rare combination of pace and ability. He was a great finisher, but he was lightning, and he was so smart, and he knew where and when to run, and nobody could live with him. He went to that World Cup in 98. He'd only had the one Premier League season, a season in which he played 36 games and scored 18 goals and won a Golden Boot, 23 and 44 in all competitions. He was disgustingly good. Scored 18 and 30 the next year. That's the year he gets the first hamstring thing. Comes back 11 in 27. He has to alter his game. Now, bear in mind, he's 21 and he's having to alter his game because his pace he can't use the same way. 16 and 28, 19 and 39, 19 and 35, 16 and 29. He's a machine. For that era, those are great numbers. 24 and 46, 28 and 43, 28 and 54, 19 and 38, all competitions. He's a machine. He's relentless. He was such a good player. He won the Ballon d'Or at 22. Just consider that for a second. When people talk about great players, this guy won the Ballon d'Or at 22 years of age. No English player has won it since. The only one right now that looks like they might have a chance to win it moving forward is Jude. I think Bukayo Saka could potentially get into that conversation as well. Phil Foden has the talent. I don't know if he'll get there because of the team he plays in, and the system doesn't really lend itself to massive numbers from those wide players. Obviously Harry Kane, but Harry Kane has never even had a top 3 finish in the Ballon d'Or. Michael Owen won it. And you look at what he did for England, and you look at the goals he scores. He scores his first goal 27th of May against Morocco in a pre-World Cup tournament. Goes to the World Cup, scores against Romania, scores that famous goal against Argentina, and then he's off to the races. And by the time he leaves Liverpool in the summer of 2004, Michael Owen has 26 goals for England and is 25 years of age. He is going to break Bobby Charlton's record. And he got a couple more that year. He got 4 the following year. So he's 26 now. And he's up to 35 goals. He got a hat-trick against Colombia, scored 2 against Argentina. 26, 35 goals. No chance he doesn't destroy Bobby Charlton's record. And yet he only scored 5 more. He got to 40 at the age of 28. 12th of September. In fact, he was 27. It was 3 months shy of his 28th birthday. 27, he got to 40. He was absolutely going to destroy Bobby Charlton's record. And he may well have said it where nobody would have got close to it. Now, I know Kane's on this incredible run for England, but he would have passed Charlton, and I think he probably puts 20 between him and Charlton, which would put him on, 69, 70 goals for England. Now, Harry Kane is going to break that. But for the moment, Harry Kane is on 62. So you're talking maybe another year before he breaks it, which will be 2024, 2025 kind of time. Owen would have then held that record from probably on the same path he was on, probably 2010. So it would have been 15 years he would have held it. So not nearly as long as Charlton, but it would have been Wayne Rooney never broke it. Wayne Rooney wouldn't have got close to it. Kane is aided by the fact he takes penalties. Michael Owen didn't. Yeah, he's got a few penalties for England. Michael Owen scored most of his goals from open play. But it's forgotten how good Michael Owen was. In part because he's quite unlikable as a pundit. I don't think he means to be, and I don't think he's an unlikable person. Just think he's a little bit oblivious to everything. A couple more. Kieran Dyer. I remember he made his England debut playing right back. I think he'd just moved to Newcastle. It was just before he left Ipswich for Newcastle. But he'd been like a real shining star at Ipswich. He was one of the most exciting young players in the country. He went to Toon. And there's varying kind of schools of thought about why it all kind of fell away for him. He had a decent career at Newcastle, played 250 times for them. But his England career, he won 33 caps. He felt like he should have got a lot more when he was young. He was a brilliant dribbler. He was a clever passer. He was a really inventive player. Play right side, left side, right back, play off a striker. Played centre midfield later in his career. Had a great cardio to go box to box. There's some that believe that the reason his career didn't quite become what it should have become is because of his own attitude. He obviously had some injuries as well. He famously had that fight on the pitch with Lee Bowyer. He left Newcastle at 29, and that was kind of it for him. He went to West Ham. It didn't work out. He had a loan back at Ipswich. It didn't work. Had a spell with QPR and a spell with Borough, and they didn't work out either. He never played for England after 2007. He should have been more than he was. Joe Cole should have been a lot more. Joe Cole coming through at West Ham was the most highly regarded English player that I can remember, before or since. This was the guy England were going to build around. This was the guy the whole English team was going to be built around. As a 10. I think the changing in the styles of football to more what Mourinho brought to England, and that more kind of physical, cynical style. The fact that Joe Cole was at Chelsea, Mourinho shoved him out on the wing and stunted what he was good at. Look, he still had a decent career with Chelsea. He went on, he was garbage Liverpool, but he had a good loan at Lille. He had a decent spell with West Ham. But he was never, ever nearly the player he should have been. He had some wonderful moments for West Ham. He had one really good season for Chelsea. But he was never, ever the player that he should have been. Like, he was the next Gaza, but potentially, going to actually live up to what he could be, but he never was. Speaking of Gaza, he'd be the oldest player on this list, and he's worth a mention here. Came through at Newcastle. Everybody wanted him. Ferguson was desperate for him. Spurs gave money to everybody Gaza had ever met to convince Gaza to join them. He had a couple of great seasons with Spurs, but his life was spiraling off the rails there. He was, very much a fan of the nightlife and what came with it. He has that phenomenal 1991 season, where he scores 7 and 26 in the league, but gets 6 and 6 in the FA Cup and 6 and 5 in the League Cup, 19 goals in 37 games, earns the move to Lazio, goes to play the FA Cup final, and his knee explodes, and he misses the whole season. And Lazio put the transfer off for a year. And he went to Lazio, and it never worked. For whatever reason, it never worked for him. He had some really good games, but he could never string 2 good games together. There was no questioning the talent, but there was a lot of question about the desire, the dedication. He went to Rangers, and he was great for Rangers. For 2 years, he was great for Rangers. And then he wasn't great for them anymore. And then he joined Middlesbrough, and he had a good year there when he helped them get promoted. He helped them get promoted, then he had a good year. And then he fell off the cliff, and he joined Everton, and he was never any good for Everton. And then he played for Burnley, and he was never any good for Burnley. And Gaza, who should have been, in his early 30s, just sitting in midfield and dictating games with his brilliant passing and his strength and his ability to read the game and just find the right spaces to play in and pick the right path. This guy was so good. He had everything. Gaza was, what was he, 5'11", 6 foot? 5'10", I'd say he's probably a little bit taller than that, but Gaza was built like a tank, had energy for days, could just run and run and run. He was quick. He was an incredible dribbler. He had everything. He was a great pass the ball, a great crosser. He had a good shot on him. He had everything you'd want in a central midfielder, except between the ears. And I do wonder what would have happened had he gone to United. He might be the most talented English player of all time. Genuinely. He's certainly the best kind of attacking central midfielder. Like, not like the way Gerrard was, but just Gerrard's game was more like sort of right side at centre. Gaza was a real central midfielder. Gerrard was always better out of the midfield, playing in more advanced roles or wider. Gaza was like so much better than Frank Lampard. So much better than Frank Lampard. But never had a fraction of the career that Lampard had. Lampard had an incredible career. He overachieved. Gaza massively underachieved. He was 25 leaving Spurs. He should have been going on to become a superstar. He wrecks his knee in that FA Cup final, and he's just never the same after that. He still retained a lot of the same abilities. He didn't have that same explosive burst anymore. But that time away from the game, that year, I think that brought him further away from his destiny than the injury itself. It's just such a shame. 57 caps, 10 goals. Obviously had some great moments for England. Excellent in the World Cup in 90. Excellent in the Euros in 94. In 96. Played a pretty important part in getting them to the World Cup in 98, and then doesn't get picked by Glenn Hoddle, and then the shit hits the fan, and like that was really the death knell for his career. And last one then, just to touch on, is Darren Anderton, who I mentioned a few weeks ago. Had a good career with Portsmouth, and then with Spurs, with Birmingham, Wolves, and then Bournemouth. Played right up until he was 36, but only won 30 England caps. And considering he was, one of England's best players in the mid-90s, one of the reasons he didn't win as many caps he should have is because he had a lot of injuries. He was great for Portsmouth. That second season with them earned his move to Spurs. He started off like a house on fire with Spurs, had 3 great years, and then he started to get hurt. And once he started to get hurt, he couldn't stop getting hurt. And you look at his career from 95, 96 to 2021, there's only one season he plays more than 27 games. He played 46 games in 98, 99. But it was 9, 19, 15, 46, 22, 26, 44, 22, 24. He was nicknamed Sick Note. That's how bad the injuries were. People used to openly call him Sick Note. And it was such a shame because he was such a good player. Cultured right-sided attacking midfielder, good crosser of the ball, powerful carrier, good shot, really good instincts. One half of the best corner routine in Premier League history. Anderton to Sheringham, that low cross into that sort of front post area, somewhere between 12 and 15 yards from goal, in line with the line of the 6-yard box. They scored, I would estimate they scored 20 goals using that one technique. Sheringham's intelligence and ability to finish, Anderton's brilliant delivery, it was just phenomenal. Darren Anderton, another, just what I've looked at today, basically just great English talents who never reached their potential, who never got to the level they should have got to. Some of them through their own transgressions, most of them through injury, mental health issues, outside pressures, Klingons, whatever you want to look at. But there we go. And that's today's podcast. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Podcast Network.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.